Good afternoon. I am not going to talk about budgets. That is not my forte. You do have great glasses, though. Thank you so much for having me today. I am the co-owner, founder, and CEO of 13 now Ace hardware stores in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, and a couple of our suburbs. I decided to craft my remark around some touchstones that I've had as a small business owner in Washington, D.C., the first one being 2003. In 2003, I moved to this amazing neighborhood called Logan Circle. No, I moved there in 1997, before a lot of people wanted to move back into Logan Circle. And I ended up getting laid off 4 times from tech jobs. And so the very first touchstone in my life, prior or after getting laid off, was starting Logan Hardware. I moved to that neighborhood because a very astute real estate agent said it was the only place I could afford. After I was done crying, I said, okay, and I moved there, and I opened the most amazing business that I could ever imagine owning. The beauty of that business, well, there are lots of them, is that I got to know this incredible community, and I also got to be part of the cooperative world. Ace Hardware, as a lot of people know, is a national purchasing cooperative, and so not only did I get a chance to play in the local sandbox, I got a chance to work on the national stage and get to know co-ops around the country and world, which has been very meaningful for me. In 2005, we started to expand. I should back up for a second and say my husband decided at one point I was having way too much fun playing in a hardware store, so he joined me. We've been business partners ever since. And in 2005, we expanded into Glover Park. So I won't bore you with all the expansion details, but from then we went on to open 10 stores a year for the next 10 years. We've closed 2 that have failed, so I can have that as part of another conversation, and have currently 300 teammates. So that was my second touchstone. In 2014, we had moved Logan Hardware from its original location on 14th and P to 14th and S, where we now reside. It was twice the space, twice the rent, 3 times the rent, and more fun challenges. But one of my teammates came to me one day and he said, you know, the community has nicknamed us Recovery Hardware. Recovery Hardware is a book that I wrote that was published in 2017, and in September of last year, which has a chapter called There Are No Tears in Hardware, but this was probably the second time I cried owning a hardware business. To be given a nickname by a community that meant so much to us for a reason that we did not actively seek out was really, really meaningful. We had been hiring folks from the Whitman Walker Addiction Services Program since almost day one, almost on accident, and it was the most beautifully happy accident of my life. So my third touchstone that I wanted to share was being nicknamed Recovery Hardware. In 2020, for those of you who, probably everyone in this room remember, there were a lot of protests in Washington, and those protests would go right down 14th Street where my office is, and my office is on the 3rd floor. We would hang out the window. My coworkers were afraid that I was going to actually fall out the windows, cheering on the protesters, crying, hanging up signs. And Mark, my husband, came to me one day during one of the protests, and he said, let's just take everybody out in the streets with us. So my 4th touchstone was walking into the streets with my teammates and deciding at that point that there was something that we had to do to make the business bigger than us, to be part of the solution that all of the protests were hoping to see happen in this world. And so in 2021, we started selling the business to our teammates through an employee stock ownership program. So now I get to say, just to be as confusing as I can, that I'm a co-op that's now an ESOP. So in August of 2021, when we officially announced the ESOP, 165 of my teammates officially became owners. And there are people like Mike, who at 60 became a runner because the organization Back on My Feet gave him a pair of shoes. Mike ran himself from living on a park bench to having a job to a team that loves him to now being part owner in my company. And so these are the stories that I get a chance to tell in Recovery Hardware that have meant so much to me. I think I say all that to say that in Washington, D.C., the small business community has been supportive, my neighbors, my cheerleaders, my believers, and it's been very impactful for me in the last 20 years. I think that the small business community does a bunch of things, obviously, for lots of neighborhoods, but here in the city, the one that stands out to me the most, having started in Logan Circle, is that it means no dark streets. When you walk down a community and there is a storefront that has gone dark, when there's a business that's left, when there's a community that's not supporting the businesses that are there, it becomes a dark street, and dark streets are unsafe. and unsafe communities are not where people want to live. And you can see that cycle going back to what Logan Circle became during those terrible moments in the 60s. I don't want to see that happen anywhere in the district again, and for anything that we've tried to do in our communities and supporting small businesses and cheering on our neighbors is to make sure that we don't have those kinds of things happen again. So that sounds a little bit like a bummer. Everything has been wonderful for us. I announced that I was turning over the reins to a new CEO. He's currently the president of a store in Fairfax, Virginia. If any of you live in Virginia, he's coming on as my successor. He's been in the hardware business since he was like, I don't know, in diapers. And I'm very excited about all this transition. So I'm going to stop there. I think I was given 4 minutes and probably went over my time. Those are my touchstones. This is why small business is important to me. And I should probably say that I got my very first loan to start Logan Hardware from the SBA. So I would not be here, technically, if it were not for the SBA. So thank you very much.